You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All righty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and I am joined, as always, by your co-host, Kevin. How are we doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. It's Friday night, no place I'd rather be, so I'm ready to start talking some football, get ready for this weekend we got coming up.
Yeah, this one should be a good one. Great slate of games on this guy. It's going to be a lot of fun. Some very interesting matchups too. When I was looking through and kind of going through some of the stuff that we do to prepare for tonight, and I'm not gonna lie, there's some matchups here that I'm like, oh my, this is gonna be a defensive, just slugfest without great defensive teams in it. But we're also gonna have some really fun matchups and some things that we probably may see some playoff potential rematches here this weekend as well. So it could be very interesting, a lot of fun here, a lot of great fantasy options and plays there as well. So one of the other things too, guys, if you are chiming in on Twitter and you're throwing out the comments, you're throwing out the questions, things like that, just be patient with us. We will get there for you and be able to answer those questions, things like that. But with some of the new system stuff going on with StreamYard, sometimes it takes us a little bit longer to get to those, but we will absolutely get to your questions and comments. And that's what this whole show is about. So if you guys have questions, have, fantasy start sits, those types of things, throw them out there. We love going through that, love talking about those things and really going through that. But Kevin, before we start getting into the games and before we get into the Thursday night breakdown, any other thoughts before we get to the football?
No, I think this is the time of year where people start getting trade anxious, right? Like those of us who like to trade or at least like to see how we can improve our team. There's definitely a lot of that starting to creep up. Teams trying to jockey for position, feeling like they're going to be in contention all year long. Teams who aren't in contention that want to try and get there, all the different things, right? So as always, like Derek mentioned, shoot us a note real quick, drop us a line on one of the shows, hit us up on Twitter, and we're more than happy to help out however we can. But this is the fun time of the year, right? This is the time of year where people who aren't as invested don't pay as much attention to the waiver wire. So you can typically start to find a little bit more value in the waiver wire now that we're going on week 5 and getting into, the real middle of the season type thing. So this is where the cream starts to rise to the top and you can really make or break your fantasy season here in the next, 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, I would agree with you. We do have a first question of the night coming in. This one coming from B-Dubs on YouTube. Appreciate you tuning in, B-Dubs. Wondering if it's time to sell high on Debo. Should I try and go after Ridley or Lamb? What are your thoughts on this one?
If you're going to go after one of them, I would go after Ridley because the consistent weekly target share is there. What the Cowboys are doing on offense is really fun to watch. But quite frankly, if you're an owner of any of the pass catchers, it can be quite frustrating. Derek, I know you have CD in a lot of places because we both thought he would really kind of emerge as the clear guy this season, and they're kind of turning the page back a little bit. They're just taking what the defense gives them. They're really happy with their ground game, as we've seen Zeke have 2 back-to-back top 5 performances, and Debo, quite frankly, he's the show in town. Like, I think this week might tell how it could go, right? We're going to see how this offense looks with Trey Lance. We're going to see how he handles himself for an entire game. But if it's anything like last week when Trey Lance came in, he looks for Debo just as much or more than Garoppolo did. So I don't know that you have to make a move. If you really want one of those guys, I'd go after Ridley. But I think you can ride with Debo here for a little while. He's really been able to surpass my expectations for him this season in a big way. I did not see Debo leading the league in yards. I did not see him leading the league in yards after the catch. I did not see him with the 21% target share that he has for the 49ers at the moment. I thought they would be much more run heavy, even with Mostert and Jeff Wilson going down. So Debo's been a great surprise. And quite frankly, the Niners are going to have to keep scoring points to keep up in that division now. They're at least a game and a half back because of their loss to Seattle and what they need to do to continue to keep up with an undefeated Arizona team and now a 4-1 Rams team. So I think I keep Debo. That's a long-winded answer, but I think I'd keep Debo for now. And I'm really surprised I'd say that because there was no chance in hell I would have told you that before the season started.
That is 100% correct. You would not have. And I remember through some of those team breakdowns that we did, you were very much not a guy that was not a fan of Debo at all, and not looking to put him on some of the rosters. And I remember even going through some of those drafts there. That was one of those that you and I would have some of those conversations about. Let's go Debo. No, let's not. And he was a guy that was one of those that it took us. There was some serious conversations that happened when trying to draft together on some of those things about whether or not we wanted this guy on our roster. Now we've got him a couple of places. And he's far surpassed what I think either one of us would have thought possible there. I would probably keep Debo, but it's close. It's close for me, and it's closer than I would think even at this point because of the fact that while Ridley – so looking at it, Debo is averaging about 10.8 targets per game. Ridley's averaging 10.5. So they're really close there. But the fact that, we have yet to see those great big breakout games that Calvin Ridley's going to have, or that we would, foresee having, and him probably having more of those in the future, that I would probably look at Ridley, but I'm perfectly fine keeping Debo because I think that this is going to continue. When you look at Kyle Shanahan, he is going to ride the hot hand, and he's going to game script for a guy. And when you look at it, Deebo Samuel has the hot hand. He is very much the first read for the passing work there. Maybe even more so to the point than what George Kittle is getting there. Like when the quarterbacks are snapping, they're looking for Deebo on those first routes and those first reads far more than they were even looking for George Kittle. So I think Deebo is the number one pass catcher there in San Fran, and I think that that's going to continue going on there. So B-Dub saying, great, thanks. He's been productive. Just not sure how sustainable it is. So
I think it is.
Yeah.
I really do. I think Kittle's not doubtful or trending towards not playing this weekend. Ayuk hasn't played his way out of the doghouse, and the 49ers have always loved Deebo Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
It's Deebo's availability that has capped his production in the past. Well, and this is the same with all NFL players, right? Like Calvin Ridley's out this week because of a personal matter. We're not quite sure what that is, but he didn't even make the trip to London. So at this point, I would say it is sustainable. The 49ers are not super deep in pass catchers. George Kittle has not been the force at tight end this season that we have come to enjoy over the past 3 or 4 years when he's been healthy. Ayuk is playing his way back into relevance with the team, and it's a rotating door at running back. So as long as Deebo's on the field, I would tell you that it's highly sustainable, just due to the lack of options and places to go with the football.
Yeah, very much of a cosign on that one. So I like it. Like I said, I'd keep Debo on that one. So when you look at it, Debo's a guy that has been injury plagued his entire career, or health resistant, as we like to say on this show. But and that's the thing with all NFL players and all football players, they're injury prone until they're not, right? Like there's been a lot of players out there that were constantly dinged up, banged up, and then they put together 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons in a row where they play almost some Iron Man type of football where they don't miss games, they don't miss time, they don't get dinged up. And then you'll see again where, you'll see a guy that through 3 or 4 years doesn't get hurt, doesn't show up on the injury report, nothing, and then has a bad run for 2 years or something where it's all one of those things that we're not going to see. And these injuries are tough to predict. If you could predict them, your fantasy rosters would be even better.
I was just thinking about this, and this is kind of moving on here at the moment, but there are teams out there who have Derrick Henry, Cooper Kupp, and Debo, and perceivably like a Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, like a top tier tight end, all on the same freaking roster, just because of where these guys were getting drafted. Like, holy crap, would you hate going up against one of those teams right now? Like if you're in a league and that's how the owner drafted, I'm sorry, good luck to you. But tip of the cap to the guy who was able to capitalize on that and really see some of the value there, because there's no doubt they are leading their league regardless of scoring format at this moment in time, due to the production of those three guys alone, or could carry your entire roster through these first 4 weeks and really through week 5.
Yeah, I would agree. We do have a couple of questions coming in on Twitter. So I won't be able to pop them up here in the on the screen there so we can read them and folks can see them, but I'll read them out here. So we do have Shooter Shoot Basketball Podcast. Kenny, who's been on the show before, is saying a couple of goat emojis here. So a couple of goats on here. We appreciate the comment there. Shooter Shoot Basketball Pod.
Gracias.
Yes, thank you. And then Peng's Picks is writing in, if Russell Wilson is out for 6 to 8 weeks, is he droppable at this point? I know my answer, so I'll let you go first.
I mean, probably not. As soon as you drop him, someone else is going to pick him up, right? Like, I think you eat the roster spot. I think you keep him on there and eat the roster spot. You're still talking about a top 5 quarterback in most accounts. Definitely worth the IR spot if that's what they're going to do. I mean, if they're saying a minimum of 4 weeks, they could stick him on the 3-week IR and then do whatever after the fact. But man, I don't know that I'd drop him. Even in here's where my exception is: single quarterback 4-point per touchdown leagues
without an IR spot.
Well, yeah, like that's probably where I would lean. Okay, I could probably drop him and get similar production because you're not really separating it out at that point. But if it's any type of a super flex, absolutely not. And if you're getting 6 points for a passing touchdown, I wouldn't do it at that point either. So scoring might be slightly dependent, but I think in the vast majority of leagues, more and more players seem to like the higher scoring league than the traditional standard 4-point, no PPR, mundane fantasy scoring where it's 90 points is a great week, and if you break 100, you smashed it. Like, it's kind of boring. Everyone wants to be a little bit higher scoring than that. So I'm going to tell you no. I would keep Russ. I have him in a couple different leagues, and I plan on keeping him in all of them. It hasn't even crossed my mind to drop him.
Yep. I'm keeping him as well. It wouldn't surprise me that that they don't find a way to shorten that deal up. I know he was going and meeting with some acclaimed surgeon in LA. I can't remember the name of it, but he was seeking some other advice and things like that after the MRI that It wouldn't surprise me if they find a way for him to get him on the field sooner than later with that one.
Just tough though, man. That ruptured tendon, like it's not just a. I mean, if it's going to require surgery, regardless, and to have that tendon basically split, right? Like that's what happened. It blew up. That's going to be a tough one to try and speed a recovery from. Like there's there's hand exercises to try and strengthen it, but that's all body chemistry at that point, and who knows?
Right. Well, you can't necessarily speed along the healing. I'm not a doctor, but I've done enough injuries in my past to know that you can't really speed along a tendon deal. But at the same time that, I wouldn't surprise me if they find a way to potentially like splint that up or find a way for him to play through that and then do an off-season type of thing. Like we've seen a lot of other players do with other ligament and tendon type of damage, just because of, the fact that Russ is one of those guys that hasn't missed a start. So I could see him trying to find a way to continue that, things like that. But I think it's going to be tough. So either way, I'm not dropping him. I'm going to be moving him to an IR type of spot. If I've got that, even if I don't, I'm going to chew up a roster spot on that one, because I do think that he'll be back this week, or not this week, but this season for sure. And looking through that, where all of a sudden you get a QB that can go out and win you a week on any single week, heading down the run to your playoffs and for the fantasy playoffs. Yeah, I'm gonna absolutely do that and try and string quarterback in single QB league. If you're in a super flex, last thing you want to do is drop that and have somebody else pick him up and stash him, and now you've got a very dangerous option. You see what I did there? Dangerous. Yeah. Okay. Dangerous option there coming off the bench for your fantasy playoff. So no, I'm not dropping him. But Bangs Picks, appreciate the question. It's a great one. And I'm sure a lot of folks out there had that. So guys, a couple of shout outs there. Both Shoot or Shoot Basketball Pod and Pangs Picks chiming in there the last couple. They've got some great content out there. Go give them a check. Go check them out and check and take a look at that. They really do have some great stuff there. Kevin, let's go ahead and get into some of the Thursday night games and the reaction there. What were your thoughts there?
It's looking more and more like last Sunday's game that the Rams played was more of the aberration. It was the exception to the rule. This Rams team's good. And yes, they have some holes on defense that they're trying to figure out. Yes, some big plays were avoided to Tyler Lockett specifically. But that's part of football, right? Like you're not going to hit on every single one of these deep shots and everything else. But Stafford looked good. It was good to see Robert Woods involved. I thought that Troy Aikman and Joe Buck did a good job of explaining how Woods was getting open and what they were doing with their route combinations. So I know a lot of people bash on Joe Buck, but between the two of them explaining kind of those shadow routes and how one guy is kind of the natural decoy, like his route is to draw receivers away and the attention towards him, and the other one floats right behind where the hole opens up. It speaks to McVay's offensive mind, and it speaks to Matthew Stafford being able to read defenses probably at a higher level than he was ever really given credit for in Detroit. He was more labeled as the gunslinger, and I'm just going to force it in to make something happen. And it's not necessarily the case. Stafford looked really good, had a finger injury of his own where it was dislocated and he had to pop it back in the middle of the game and was able to finish out. And is only, I think that injury is only overshadowed because of what happened with Russ and the unfortunate tendon explosion that happened to Russ Wilson. So I was impressed. I like watching this Rams team. They're a lot of fun to watch. They're extremely fantasy relevant all across the board. Everybody got involved last night. Both running backs had touchdowns. Robert Woods had his kind of breakout game for the season. Cooper Kupp was still 97 yards on, was it 8 receptions, I believe, something like that. Higbee caught a touchdown. Everybody was relevant. And that's what's fun to watch, right? It's not just, if you're watching a team that has a whole bunch of weapons on it, i.e. the Cowboys, for fantasy purposes, the Cowboys have been frustrating to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Inversely, the Rams just showed how you can incorporate all your weapons, and everybody got fed. So it was fun. I thought they played really well. I would like to note that I called that correctly with the Rams and the under, and I also correctly told you that Tyler Lockett would be under 77.5 yards receiving. So I'm going to take my victory lap early, and then I'll take it again on Tuesday when we cover it for real on our show.
Good for you. Good for you. I had the Rams, but I took the over on that one, thinking that game would be about a 28-24 type of thing. But I also want to point out just some of those things where you were talking on that. You mentioned the Tyler Lockett and the under, and you and I had some conversation on the Tuesday show about whether it was going to be a DK game or a Tyler Lockett game. You said it was going to be a DK game. I said it was going to be a Tyler Lockett game. So I've got to give you the tip of the hat on that one as well, because DK had the better game on that one. I do contend, though, that if there had not been a pass interference call on Tyler Lockett, those would have reversed. Because
it's a great defensive play.
Yeah.
You have to take that penalty, right? Like,
yes,
I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, like every time that ball went deep, I went, oh crap, I'm gonna miss my wager here. Like I'm gonna miss the player prop. And luckily none of those connected, because I was thinking about you.
And he almost caught that one steal on that PI call. But I do contend that had that PI not happened, that was a 66-yard touchdown, and that would have also taken a touchdown and 20 yards off of DK as well.
Right, and the touchdown that he caught that was called back due to was it holding or hands to the face?
Yeah, right there at the end of the half.
Yep, I mean, so basically he lost 2 touchdowns, and DK had 2 touchdowns, and I'd rather be lucky than good, right?
Yeah, well, that's okay. But we also saw something too, right? One of the big takeaways I had there was looking through that and how that Seahawks offense operates, with the difference between Russ and with Geno Smith. And Geno Smith looked good. I'm not taking anything away from him by saying that, but he came out, looked incredibly good, looked a lot better than I've ever seen Geno Smith look in a football game since he came into the NFL. And that's what I think a lot of people thought when they drafted him and as a prospect early in his career, that he could come in and have a game like that. It just happened to, take a journeyman backup route in order for him to develop into that player a little bit. But
what happens when you go to where football players go to die there in New York?
Well, I'm not going to dispute that either. But one of the very interesting takeaways that I had on that one was how the offensive weapons shift happened dramatically in that as well. Because when you looked at it, I believe DK had the 1 touchdown and maybe about 30 yards of receiving or so, 30 to 40, somewhere in there. And then when Geno came in, that was where he was looking. He wasn't really looking at many of the other options there. And you saw DK really explode over those last couple of drives, going down there and really put up a bunch of points, put up another touchdown there. So that was just kind of an interesting note and something to kind of keep in mind. If you're setting some DFS type of stuff, or you're setting some lineups, you're setting some of those types of things for the future there, and just how different that offense looked, and how each one of those quarterbacks looks for the player differently there as well. So that was a big kind of takeaway for me there as well. But we do have another question coming in on the YouTube. This one coming from Kenneth on YouTube. Zach Moss, 100 plus yards, 2 TDs this week. I think Buffalo runs the ball a lot and keeps defense fresh instead of trying to get in a shootout with the Chiefs like everyone expects. You very well may be right there, Kenneth. We'll get into that one when we get to the Chiefs and the Bills, as we're going to run through the entire slate of games here for Sunday and Monday night here coming up. And Kevin, any other thoughts on this Thursday game? You ready to hop into some of the weekend games?
No, let's get to it. Start looking forward.
All right. Here we go. The first matchup, and this one's going to go down in London. So make sure that you guys are setting your lineups before you go to bed Saturday night, because for some of us, that game will kick off before we even get up on Sunday. The London games happen early. The spread on this one, Atlanta by 2.5. The over-under is 45. The Jets and the Falcons teeing off in London there. What are your thoughts here?
I'm thinking that the Rams coaching staff may not survive their first season. Or the Falcons coaching staff may not survive. Like, they just have not looked good. They really just haven't. I expect the Jets to win this game outright. I expect this game to hit the under. The Falcons, no Calvin Ridley, no Russell Gage. I mean, what's Matthew Stafford? What's Matt Ryan going to do? You check down to Cordell Patterson and you try and get 10 targets to Kyle Pitts, and then what are you going to do with the other 13 times he has to throw the ball this game? Like, I don't see how points are going to be at a premium from the Falcons side. On the flip side, I expect Zach Wilson to have a pretty good game. I mean, definitely a good QB2 in a super flex. I don't know that I'd start him in a single QB league, especially being in London. These games are typically lower scoring. But I like Zach Wilson in a super flex. He's a solid QB2. I like Corey Davis. I expect him to have 100 yards and find the end zone again this week with the very friendly Atlanta Falcons pass defense. Crowder's coming back, so that'll be a good thing. They also get Elijah Moore back, who sat out week 4 with a concussion. We're starting to see the emergence of Michael Carter, and they also get Tevin Coleman back as well. So the Jets are getting healthier, and the Falcons are losing players. So I think it's the under. I don't see this game being very high scoring, but what scoring does happen, I expect it to be from the Jets side. So Jets in the under.
Yep, that's how I've got that as well. I think this one's going to be about 20-17 when it's all said and done, favoring the Jets. So I'm going to take the under. I'm going to take the Jets on that one. And I think a lot of it holds true where the Falcons are just missing too much on this thing. This is the game that I'm going to be looking to see what Kyle Pitts does because of the fact of, you mentioned it with Ridley out, with Gage out. What does Zacharias's role look like in this one? That could be a sneaky DFS type of play. Same thing too with Kyle Pitts. Like, that's where the passing game is going to have to go through when it's not being checked down to Cordell Patterson. Same thing too. I think that you'll actually see Cordell Patterson maybe sneak out there. They'll have him, kind of run out of the slot maybe a little bit more and have Mike Davis back there in the backfield, and you'll see them trying to establish the run through Mike Davis and let Cordell Patterson be more of a wide receiver in this game here. Same thing too, right? I think Michael Carter we're going to see a sighting from him, and this could be one of the games that we've kind of been waiting for to see the breakout potentially happen. Same thing too with these pass catchers on the Jets side. I do think that Zach Wilson is going to put up a decent game, although that being said, it's probably still going to be maybe around 250, 260 yards and maybe 2 touchdowns is about how I see his stat line kind of looking when this thing is all said and done there. Any other thoughts on this one?
No, honestly, I think it's kind of a snoozer.
Yeah. Out of those, are you going to bother setting the alarm or just let just snooze in?
I think I'm just going to let myself naturally wake up and just kind of flip it on and make myself a breakfast burrito and a cup of coffee while the game's on. And honestly, this is going to be a background game. This is a lot of games I will sit down and watch and pay attention to and get vested in. This is a background noise game. Like, I'll be messing around with the kids and doing whatever on a Sunday morning.
Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and head on to stateside here. We've got the Packers meeting the Bengals in Cincinnati. Green Bay is favored by 3. The over-under on this one is 50.5. What are your thoughts on this guy?
I like Green Bay here. I think this is going to be a very entertaining game. Another game with a lot of fantasy pieces that are going to be involved. We'll see what the status of Joe Mixon is tomorrow. It sounds like they're going to try and have him practice tomorrow and then make the determination whether he's going to play Sunday or not. So we'll see how that goes. Regardless, you have Joe Burrow. We know T. Higgins is playing, so you have the full cast of characters in the receiving core for Cincinnati, and Green Bay has Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, and Devontae Adams, and quite frankly, most weeks that's all you need other than a random Cobb or Tanyan sighting. So I expect this to be a high-scoring game. I don't think either team's going to do a very good job of stopping the other, but I do think Green Bay finds a way to win just with that the natural experience that the Green Bay star power has behind them that Cincinnati doesn't quite have yet.
Gotcha. What do you got on the over-under on this one?
I'm going to take the over. I want a high-scoring game here, so I'm going to take the over.
I see it similarly. I've got the Packers 30, the Bengals at 23. So I've got the Packers winning by about a touchdown, I think is how this is going to play out. The over on that as well. And as far as that goes, right, you're going to see your usual suspects when it comes to your Packers players. If you got them, start them, play them. I think every one of them is going to have a pretty decent game, even though when you look at it, Cincinnati isn't necessarily been giving up many points allowed to opposing fantasy players. Those, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and Aaron Rodgers, I think will still manage to put up pretty good points for you. And you'll see a lot of fantasy relevance there. And you'll see the Bengals kind of take a step back in some of the defensive rankings that they've got going in points allowed to opposing fantasy options there. The Bengals and T. Higgins come back. I don't know that the Bengals are going to rush to make T. Higgins a huge part of this game plan to the point where I think they'll probably see maybe 5 or 6 targets when it's all said and done. But his coming back, I think Tyler Boyd takes a step back for you, even though he's been really great lately for fantasy. I think you'll see him take a step back. And same thing too, right? Like keep an eye on Joe Mixon. If he's not good to go, I'm not necessarily excited to start Samaje Perine there or Chris Evans in either one of those things because Cincinnati doesn't have necessarily a great line to get the ball rolling, get the ball running on that. And Samaje Perine, what made him dominant in college was the fact that he was bigger than just about everybody else out there and had the ability to run through some folks there. That's a little different game here in the NFL where, those defensive linemen and linebackers are not as big or bigger than he is. So I don't see him necessarily being able to get the ball moving great on the ground behind this line. And, probably would look for him to have somewhere maybe around 12, 13, well, call it 15 touches and maybe about a 3.6 yards per carry type of average. So not a great game on the run. And I think that's going to set up for Cincinnati to have to pass to keep this thing close. Any other thoughts with this guy?
I guess just to piggyback on that, if Mixon doesn't go, I think that only bolsters Chase, Higgins, and Boyd. Really, Cincinnati's the lower the score, the better this is for Cincinnati.
Correct.
I mean, it's just one of those games that if you're going back and forth, the chances of you making a mistake before Aaron Rodgers is pretty damn good. So Cincinnati wants to keep this at the under, but I think the Packers are starting to click a little bit. They've had a couple tough games. They found ways to win. They're riding a high right now, and I think it continues.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and head on over to the divisional matchup here. The Lions.
It's a pretty blue for Minnesota.
Yeah. Well, that graphics guy every once in a while, he just misses those color reads. What
damn intern.
What can we say? Sometimes people make mistakes. I jest on that one because that graphics guy is me. So I can poke that fun at myself. Absolutely. All righty, guys. So we've got Detroit and the Vikings. Minnesota is favored by 10. The over-under on this one is a 49. What is your thoughts here?
I think Detroit can find a way to cover if TJ Hawkinson plays. If TJ Hawkinson does not play, I don't think that they have enough pass-catching weaponry in Detroit for this game to stay close, whether it's Cook or Madison. I don't think it's very good. I think Justin Jefferson's going to have a really good game this weekend. So you'll see some things there offensively from the Vikings. I mean, I want this game to be competitive, but I'm starting to feel like Detroit's losing a little bit of their will here because they're not getting healthy, right? They keep having these little injuries that prop up, and teams are doing a good job of scheming only for Hawkinson, and Jared Goff's tiny hands don't know what to do with it.
There you go. Quintus Cephas, though, is a sneaky play for me in this one. Somebody that I might be looking at in a little bit of a DFS type of play there. This is one of those that we're still questioning what happens with Dalvin Cook here, simply from the standpoint that he is still dealing with that injury. Alexander Madison actually out-touched him last week, even though both were healthy. So very interesting there. But I do see the bounce back happening for both Hawkinson and Swift this week. I think that Minnesota is going to win this one, and they're going to win 26-18 is about how I see this one playing out. So, yeah, I'm not seeing this one being a high-scoring affair. Also, Minnesota, winning by about a touchdown there. So I see the Lions covering the under on this one happening, and it'll be very interesting to see how this thing kind of plays out. I don't know that that I'm necessarily overly excited even to watch this game, even though there's a lot of fantasy relevant pieces in this one. Any other thoughts here?
No.
Very good. Let's go ahead and head on to Pittsburgh, where the Denver Broncos are heading to the Steelers. This one here, from the first time I've ever seen it when looking through some of these things, was an actual push line when I looked it up there, the over under 39.5. So very, very interesting there. The who you got in this one?
I'm going to take the Broncos. The Steelers are desperate, but Teddy Bridgewater is like 90% sure going to play on Sunday. So unless we hear some jarring news tomorrow, I expect Teddy Bridgewater to be the starting quarterback. And as long as Teddy Bridgewater is playing for the Broncos and not Drew Lock, I think the Broncos win this game. I honestly, everything in me says to take the over. Like, there's just so many ways to get over 39.5 points. But as I look at this, I can see this game being 23-13 or, something crazy like that where you don't quite even get to 40. So I'm going to take the under in a defensive struggle, which probably suits the Broncos best anyway. But this one's, you better really love football, because this one's not going to be a pretty one to watch.
No, it's going to be a difficult one. A defensive slugfest, I think, is what you're going to see here. And I think you're right. I think if Teddy plays, the Broncos win. And I originally, when I got looking at this, thought that this game would be about a 24-21 type of matchup with the Broncos winning. And the more that I've thought about this thing, the more I've come to think that I've put too many points on the board as well. I see this one probably going somewhere closer to about 17-13 when it's all said and done. Good old defensive matchup where you see a lot of run happening. And in the Steelers case, where they're not going to have a good line for Najee Harris to try and run behind, a lot of short check down type of passes going there. I don't see the Steelers weapons on the outside being able to really get much going against this Denver secondary. So, short of a over the top, coverage breakdown type of thing that one of these players puts up there, I don't see really these receivers doing much there. I do think Cortland Sutton has a decent game if Bridgewater plays, but if it's Drew Lock under center, I'm probably lowering my total points on this thing to probably a 13-10, 10-7 type of battle. Like, that wouldn't surprise me either on that type of thing.
Yeah, turnovers, I think, will really determine this game, right? Like, if a defense, either side, can find a way to produce 1 or 2 turnovers, that will significantly increase their chances of coming away victorious in this game. Like there's not going to be much room and much ability to recover from miscues. So who's more technically sound, whose defense can get that strip sack or find that interception or, rip the ball away. Special teams might come into play this one. This one's going to be some weird. You're going to find points in some weird ways in this one, I think. You're not going to have the traditional up and down the field, grinded out scoring, unless it's just a lot of 2 first downs and a field goal type thing.
The game last night on Thursday where it was, you saw one team kind of get a few plays in and then punt, and then the other team get a few plays in and punt. That's how I see this entire game going. How last night's kind of started, where it was, a bunch of 3 and outs, a bunch of 5 play type of drives, and then punt type of thing. Like that's really how I see this thing playing out.
I'd like to know the over under for length of time this game takes.
Oh,
like in the random prop bet, because I think this game's going to go by extremely fast.
Yes.
Like the Broncos are going to want to set the tone on the ground. The Steelers are going to try and run the ball a little bit, but even if not, Ben Roethlisberger is going to do his dink and dunk thing, which will keep the clock rolling. So this might be the shortest football game of the year, just as far as, here we go, and we're going to punt and turn it back over, and the clock's just constantly going to be running. So just side note, I'd be interested to see the prop on that, and I haven't found one yet.
Yeah, that would be interesting as well. I'd be interested to see that. Before we get to our next game, let's go ahead, and we've got a couple of questions coming in. Blue Crew on YouTube is asking in a full point PPR, 12 teams. He's starting Renfrow over Devonta Smith. What are your thoughts on this one?
Renfro's extremely safe, so if you just need the guaranteed points, I think Renfro's a good floor. If you are chasing points and think that you need a big game, Devonta Smith's going to be your guy. It's not going to be Hunter Renfrow. So a lot of it depends on what your matchup's looking like and kind of how you want to play that situation. So if you want to play it safe, go with Hunter Renfrow. But Devonta Smith is probably where I would personally lean, because I think Carolina is going to find a way to get out in front, and Devonta Smith's been the one offensive light that's been semi-consistent for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right. I'm right there with you. Renfrow, neither Renfrow nor Devonta Smith have great matchups this week. That Carolina defense has been rather difficult, whereas the Raiders have a little bit easier matchup. They're playing the Bears, but again, the Bears have been decent on the defensive side of the ball against allowing points to the wide receiving position. But again, I like what Devonta Smith has done, and I just like what he's been able to do. One of the problems that you have when you're talking Renfrow, you're talking about a guy that's going to be 4th, 5th in. He's going to be the 4th or 5th read on that. Devonta Smith is going to be the first read, and then Jalen takes off. So, I would go with Devonta. But again, if you're chasing points or doing the safe floor, like Kevin said, that's another option. Griffin over on YouTube, start Corey, Mike Davis, Moss, or Chenault for a flex in PPR this week. This is a tough one. This is a good one. Mike Davis is out for me.
And Moss is out. I think it's between Corey Davis and Laviska Shenault. I'm going to lean Corey Davis because Zach Wilson has shown that he will consistently try and find ways to get him the ball. Shenault would be right behind his heels. I understand that with DJ Chark going down, everyone's expecting Shenault to have a big game or at least be more involved in the offense. I think we're going to see Jones more involved with the offense as well. We might see them try and run the ball a bit more. Trevor Lawrence has rediscovered his legs. All those things are good things for Jacksonville, and Tennessee's terrible too. I think I truly think that this is a coin flip on what you feel more comfortable with. It's either Corey Davis or it's Laviska Shenault. I don't know that anyone could strongly argue against either decision. It's whoever you'd rather watch. Like, if you want to get up early on Sunday and watch Corey Davis play, then put him in your lineup and have fun with it. If you don't want to get up early and you don't love the Jets and think they're going to throw a stinker out in London because of the time change and the slow game script and everything else, then I completely understand Laviska Shenault going up against a subpar Tennessee Titans pass defense as well. So either one of those guys for me, and I don't think you can go wrong.
No, I don't think you can either. For me, it goes Shenault, Corey Davis, Zach Moss. Mike Davis is like he would be a desperation play for me type of thing. But again, like you just stated with the time change going on there, I don't know that that's a really good play there. And that's part of the reason that I moved Shenault over Corey Davis on this one is simply because of the fact that, a lot of times you see those guys come out a little bit flat when they travel internationally to play some of these games in the past. So I'll take Shenault and that going up against and that matchup that he has. I like that one there. So let's go ahead. Another question coming in. This one from Zuda on YouTube. Pick 2, Michael Carter, Singletary, Sermon, Gaskin. He has Mixon too, but he's out right. Mixon will be a game time decision from what we've seen. And like Kevin stated earlier, we should find out more tomorrow about his status, ready to go. But Gaskin is absolutely out for me.
Gaskin's definitely out, not only because of how he's been playing, but going up against Tampa Bay's run defense. So Gaskin, absolutely not. Devin Singletary, absolutely not. I am not convinced in him or Zach Moss when it comes down to Buffalo and that running attack. So pick 2. So that leaves you, right? I mean, Mixon's the clear one. So I think you go Mixon 1 if he's playing.
Mm-hmm. And then I'd probably go Sermon, then Carter.
And I'd go the other way around. I'd go Carter, then Sermon, just because Elijah Mitchell has been fully cleared to play. We know he's going to be getting more involved, so he is going to take a chunk of those carries that Sermon had been getting. So I would go Mixon, Carter, and then Sermon. Derek just kind of flipped it, right? He went Mixon, Sermon, then Carter.
Mm-hmm. And part of the reason that I like Sermon over the Carter this week, again, was like we just talked about with that international game. I think the Jets are going to throw the ball more than not on this one, because I think that's how they're going to be able to move the ball against this Atlanta Falcons defense is through the air. But I do, like I said, when we were breaking down the Jets, this could be a Michael Carter sighting, and this could be one of those that it wouldn't surprise me to see him break off a 30-40 yard touchdown run, find a hole in this Falcons defense that has been porous, and be able to take one and house one there. So that wouldn't surprise me. But I do think that Sermon will get a little bit more run and be a little bit more consistent. He had a good game last week, and I think that he'll get the primary workload on this one, even though Elijah Mitchell's coming back, just because he looked very consistent last week. And one of the things that we tend to see out of Shanahan is he rides the guy that's looking good and looking consistent, and he did that last week. One other thought in there, yeah, he has Aaron Jones as well. Just with Mixon out, didn't know which 2 to pick. I'm thinking Jones and Mixon if he plays Carter. Yeah, like that would be right in line with what Kevin said. Is you take Aaron Jones, you take Mixon if he plays, and if not, you've got to pivot to Carter for sure.
I like it.
Absolutely. All righty, let's go ahead and head into the next matchup here, and that is the Miami Dolphins heading to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are favored by 10 in this one. The over-under is 48. What are your thoughts?
Over in Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is a little disappointed with how they showed last week on national television. Yes, they came away with the win. Ultimately, that's all that matters. But I do think that there's a sense of pride and professionalism going on with that. I think that we are going to see a lot of Chris Godwin in the slot. So I think Chris Godwin is going to be the leading pass catcher for Tampa Bay in this game. And I expect Jalen Waddle to also have a big game, with Will Fuller being out because of his broken finger, with Parker having kind of a slew of different injuries that have crept up on him. I expect Jalen Waddle to be extremely relevant against a porous Tampa Bay secondary. So this game's going to get really fun for about the first 3 quarters, and I think Tampa Bay is going to find a way to shut it down and pull away here. So I'm going to take Tampa Bay to cover, and I'm going to take the over.
I do like the garbage time options, though, in both Devontae Parker and in Jalen Waddle. I think that you'll see those guys have some pretty good games. It really wouldn't surprise me that you see a lot of production on these Miami pass catchers continue all game long, because this one they're going to be trailing. I had this one when I went through and kind of projected this thing out, really is almost a push type of deal, but I do think that you'll see Tampa Bay probably pull ahead. I think you'll see them cover. I do think that you'll see the over because I do think you'll see Tom Brady on a mission to show that last week was really a fluke, when you had as many folks coming out there and saying that Mac Jones outplayed him and looked better than him and some of those things. I was right there with you on the Tuesday show saying some of that as well. But I think he's a guy that definitely listens to some of that, and we'll prove the world wrong there, or at least try to. I really don't like the fact that Miami is going up against this Bucs defense and Myles Gaskin. If you've got Myles Gaskin, find a way to pivot, do something different. He's a guy that's, had less than a handful of touches last week, and I don't think that changes this week. So not looking forward to playing him in any spot and if I can move out of it, I absolutely will. Any other thoughts here?
No, I think that sums it up.
All righty, let's go ahead and head on over to the Washington football team, where the New Orleans Saints come to town. New Orleans is favored by 2. The over-under on this one's 43.5. What are your thoughts here?
I like how that graphic pops with the black and the yellow, and you have the maroon for Washington. Like I like that. I like the way that graphic pops. Good job, Derek.
Well, it makes up for the other one then.
Right. With the New Orleans Saints being Jekyll and Hyde, we are going to say that
it's an odd week. That means they should be good.
Right. And Washington's pass defense has still been bad. I think this line's too low. With the way Washington's defense have been playing, like New Orleans defense hasn't been as dominant either as we thought it was going to be. I think this line's too low. So I'm going to say the over and New Orleans by a field goal, which would make them cover.
Yeah, it's not going to surprise me to see New Orleans win this by about a touchdown. I do think that the over is going to happen, and I think you're probably going to be looking, probably about 45, 46 total points scored on this one. I do think that, like you said, the Washington football team is nothing like we've thought coming into the season, where they were supposed to be this very dominant force and really have not been able to stop anybody. Furthermore, the Saints have had this up and down roller coaster, but hashtag great analysis going on here. It is an odd week, so that means that they should be good, because that's how this thing plays out. Odd weeks, they're good. Even weeks, not so much. And I kid and I joke on that one, but I do think that the New Orleans Saints can move the ball here. The question is really going to be, is Alvin Kamara going to actually be used in an Alvin Kamara type of role in this offense, or are they going to turn him into a ground and pounder type of thing again, and then bring Taysom Hill in the red zone to try and do that? Like, this New Orleans Saints offense, like, Sean Payton and team need to do some things different when they get inside that red zone. Like, I get that they want to utilize Taysom Hill and want to get him involved in some of that stuff, but Taysom Hill is like, in those situations, get the ball in your best player's hands on the field, and it's not Taysom Hill. That would be a guy named Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, absolutely. On the flip side for Washington, how worried are you about Antonio Gibson with the news coming out today that he has a stress fracture in his leg, and that's been what the injury reports have been about, and him, the discomfort and just finding a way to play through the pain? How worried are you if you're a Gibson owner here for really the rest of the season until he's able to take some time off and really let it heal?
If I'm a Gibson manager, I'm looking to try and move on.
Does that hurt? because we both like Gibson a lot.
It does. But on the flip side, if I don't have Gibson on my roster, I'm actually looking to go out there and try on this news specifically. I'm looking to go out and try and acquire, because I think that you can make a deal like that happen on the cheap, because I think you're going to see some people kind of try and panic sell, panic move on from him. So if I can acquire him for cheap off this news, I'm going to do it. And when I say cheap, I'm talking like, if I can find a fringe wide receiver or running back 3 type of thing. If I can find a guy in that 24 to 36 range to move for him, I would do it, just because of the fact that he could, like, this could be one of those that they end up sitting him for a little bit, get him some rest and get him going, where they decide that this really isn't worth their long-term future and success with this guy. But
you're
if nothing
like
else,
Mike Davis and Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, probably somewhere in there. Yeah. Yeah, I would say JD McKissick, but I'm not going to move a JD McKissick for Antonio Gibson when that's the handcuff type of thing. Naheem Hines, something like that. Maybe him and package a wide receiver and trying to get like a 2-for-1 type of deal there, where you're shipping off 2 depth places for a guy like that. Because at this point, that's what Antonio Gibson's been for your fantasy roster, is really kind of an RB3, RB2 maybe type of deal. Certainly not what you were looking for and drafting him with the upside of potentially being a top 6, top 5 type of RB on the year. And with the news coming out today, I don't think that he's going to get anywhere close to that, which definitely hurts, because we all know my love for Antonio Gibson and what I really thought of where he could play when it's all said and done this year. So another comment question coming in here. I have Devin Singletary, Alexander Madison, Myles Gaskin, Jalen Waddle, Darnell Mooney, and Darnold on my bench. Any of these I should drop and look for waiver wire pickups, trades, or any guidance? LOL. Do not drop Sam Darnold. Even if you're in a single QB league, don't drop him. You could probably move him for something, because he's QB4, QB5, depending upon what kind of league that you're playing in. Myles Gaskin, if I can, whatever I can get, I'll probably take for that. Alexander Madison, see if you can maybe move him to the Dalvin Cook manager and see if you can get something there. Same thing too with Devin Singletary. See if you can maybe move him over to the Zach Moss manager, something there. Darnell Mooney, I'm not looking to drop or move if the right trade comes along, because there's a lot of people out there very high on Darnell Mooney, thinking that he is going to supplant Allen Robinson for the rest of the season in this one. You'd be surprised some of the stuff I've seen and read over the last week. But I like Darnell Mooney would probably be a guy that I could sell high on. Jalen Waddle, I'm going to take my chances on Jalen Waddle, because I think that you're going to see his target share go up, especially with Will Fuller being out there. So kind of shotgun that all over the place. But Kevin, what are your thoughts here?
I'm going to take the more plain approach. And I agree with what you said to start with, Derek. But I think the simple approach is, what's on your waiver wire? What are you looking to trade for? Are the other managers in your league open to trades, or is it a league where people are pretty buttoned up and they don't like to trade a whole bunch? Like, all that stuff does play in. So those are the variables that we just don't know. But aside from that, I mean, the one I'd move on from the fastest is Devin Singletary. Like, I just want nothing to do with him.
Yeah, for me, it's probably him and Myles Gaskin. They're both about the same for me. I think Myles Gaskin may see some bounce back, but I'm just not hopeful of that anymore. So, all righty, let's go ahead and we will head on over to our next game here, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles going to the Carolina Panthers. Carolina is favored by 3. The over-under is 45 on this one.
I like the over because of the garbage time points that Jalen Hurts is going to be able to put up in this game. I think Carolina will bounce back from a subpar performance against the Dallas Cowboys. So I expect them to, I guess, just be a little bit more sound defensively, right? Like, it's not that the Panthers didn't put up points against the Cowboys, but they just weren't defensively sound enough to come away with the victory in that one. So I I think that they need Sam Darnold to do a better job taking care of the ball. He can't have 2 turnovers again. DJ Moore, I love DJ Moore in this game. So I do think that connection will continue. So yeah, I'm going to take the over. And I really like the push here. Like, I don't know that I'm thinking Carolina is going to win that game by more than 3. For the sake of having fun with it, since I think the line's going to be over, I'll tell you that Carolina covers.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, they did a good job setting this thing. When I look at it, it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Christian McCaffrey, who we're still kind of looking at and trying to figure out where he's at when it comes to the injury updates on some of this stuff, right?
Plan on him not playing. Like, even if he goes out there, like, I don't know that he's going to log his full
30
workload.
touches a game.
Yeah, so I think any fantasy owner who has McCaffrey, yes, you drafted him first overall. Yes, I know that you want him out there. If you have any other viable option, play someone else and don't play McCaffrey this week, because I do think that you will be disappointed by his usage, even if he goes. Last report I saw was they changed him to doubtful for the game, so it's trending like they're going to sit him one more week at least. So, Chuba might get another chance to get some run where they're not in a negative game script and see what he's able to do. But I guess that's kind of my thoughts on that one. Is I don't know that I'm playing McCaffrey unless I absolutely have to, even if he's active for the game.
Right. And we just saw another elite back coming off of an injury last week that put up a dud in Dalvin Cook. So I could see that similar kind of thing coming to fruition here as well. But when you look at it, this Carolina Panthers offense shifts dramatically, whether Christian McCaffrey's in the game or is not in the game, and how they game plan around that. And when you look at that game where he ended up leaving early, that entire offense, like, they almost looked lost there for a little bit afterwards, because they had to try and shift the game script instantly and on the fly. And instead of being a point where they're going to continue working Christian McCaffrey in on all of these things, now they've got to become a pass heavy offense. So I think it actually helps the Carolina Panthers if Christian McCaffrey doesn't necessarily play and they go into this game having the game script that they're going to be passing the ball more, in which case I think you'll see Terrence Marshall probably with 6-7 targets somewhere in there. I think you'll see Robbie Anderson with close to double-digit targets, and I think you'll see DJ Moore well over double-digit targets on this thing as well, and let Chuba Hubbard kind of do his thing and run around back there and try and keep it a little bit of a balanced play calling, a little bit more so there. But I like the Panthers should it play out where they rule McCaffrey out. Then if he comes back in and then either has to have a limited workload or ends up tweaking something again because he tried to come back too quick. So yes, put McCaffrey. Like, I'm hoping that they end up sitting Christian McCaffrey, and I've got Christian McCaffrey in several leagues. So that being the case, I'm hoping that they kind of hold off on that one. So Kevin, that being the case, we've got Zuda, who had the Singletary, Madison, Gaskin, Waddle, Mooney, and Darnold question. He ended up DMing us the picture of his waiver wire. I can't really get that pulled up here for the screen and the graphic, but we'll read off some names here. So with the names here on this that you can see on the screen, any moves that you would make for Tim Patrick, Mark Ingram, Khalif Raymond, Van Jefferson, Jalen Reagor, Randall Cobb, Curtis Samuel, Deontay Harris, Olamide Zacharias, Brandon Bolden, Kenneth Gainwell. I'll stop there.
I like Kenneth Gainwell, and I like Curtis Samuel of the list that you just read off. Those would be the two guys that I'm at least going to be looking at. I am not dropping Alexander Madison, Jalen Waddle, or Darnell Mooney for any of them. It's hard to give up on Gaskin just quite yet, given the fact that you spent a 5th or 6th round pick on him. Devin Singletary, like, honestly, you're probably getting the same production out of Devin Singletary or Kenneth Gainwell. Gainwell might be on the side of increased workload if Miles Sanders can't find a way to be fantasy relevant. So that might be a move worth making. And yeah, if you feel like you're good in the wide receiver position, or excuse me, at the running back position, then I'd drop Devin Singletary for Curtis Samuel straight up. So again, a lot of that's just how the rest your main roster is constructed, but those would be the two I'd look at least. Would be Gainwell and Curtis Samuel, and outside of that, I'm not overly interested in the rest.
Yeah. Tim Patrick's at least on a watch and see list for me, but Jerry Jeudy is trending on coming back within the timeline type of thing. So his value actually decreases as that timeline approaches there. So I'm not necessarily looking for that one either. So list would be the same for me with a lot of the same reasons. So I won't beleaguer the point. And but great question there, Zuda. Appreciate that. Let's go ahead and head on over to the Tennessee Jacksonville game. Brian on YouTube, I see your question. We'll get to that one as soon as we get this breakdown done. So Tennessee going to Jacksonville. The Titans and the Jaguars meeting up. Tennessee's favored by 4.5 points. The over-under on this one is 48.5.
Some of these lines this week are very good lines, and some of these lines this week, like, what in the hell are the odds makers thinking? Like, I'd love to be able to pick their brain and figure out where they're coming up with this, because
I want to know what they know. Yeah.
Well, right. And the one I'm specific, like, how is Atlanta favored by 2.5 when they don't have a single pass catcher outside of Kyle Pitts healthy? Same thing with this, like Tennessee Titans. We know that Julio is not playing. We know that A.J. Brown is questionable, leaning towards going to try and give it a go to at least take some pressure off of Derrick Henry, it sounds like. But I still don't know. I mean, Khalif Raymond, like, is that you're going to go to Khalif Raymond, 10 times that game and try and figure it out? Like, I expect Jacksonville to win. So all that to say, I expect Jacksonville to win straight up. I think Tennessee is going to lose to the first and second overall picks in back-to-back weeks. I think Jacksonville finds a way to get their first win of the season, and the woes for the Tennessee defense continues.
They're actually listing A.J. Brown as an official go from what I just saw there. So they're going to at least get some of that passing attack back. But
play A.J. Brown. He's going to see 13 targets. If he's truly healthy, he will see 13 targets this game to try and get this thing going a little bit. So love A.J. Brown as long as he plays and isn't rushing it back. I still think Jacksonville finds a way to win this game. Tennessee's defense is so terrible right now.
Yes. And I think, Derrick Henry's like the real question is if I put the line out there at 33.5 touches for Derrick Henry, are you taking the over? Are you taking the under on that one?
I'm going to take the under because I think Tennessee is going to be a negative game script. The Jets had to come back to win that game. I don't know that Jacksonville is going to have to. I think they're starting to get it. I think Trevor Lawrence is starting to understand this NFL game a little bit better. So I don't think Jacksonville is going to fall behind. So I'll say under.
Okay. I do think it'd be very fitting that the Tennessee Titans are the ones that give two of the rookies their first win in the NFL. I can certainly see it happening. I just have a hard time picking the Jags to win. But I'm going to go with Tennessee on. I'm going to call Jacksonville to cover, but I do see Tennessee end up winning this one in an under type of matchup there. Begrudgingly so, but I do think that if you've got Laviska Shenault, you've got Marvin Jones, hit the smash button, put them in your lineup, because I think both of those guys are also going to have very big games. James Robinson can eat a little bit. All right, Kevin, you know what? As I talk myself through this thing, I'm going to shift with you, and we'll take the Jags to win. I'm still taking the under on this one, though. So, yeah, I think that I think we'll see Trevor Lawrence get his first win. It's going to be interesting though too with some of the game lines, some of the narratives coming into this one. Does Jacksonville kind of galvanize? And you see, all the news coming out about Urban Meyer and all of that this past weekend. Is this team galvanized, or is this team going to be one that's, not happy campers, and it shows up on the field with some of the off the field distractions the coach is providing?
This team is fine. They're going to listen to their positional coaches and their offensive and defensive coordinators. Like, it's no different than a business structure. If your CEO does something stupid and goes out and gets himself in trouble, does it really affect the frontline workers? Well, no. The frontline workers still report up to the managers, who report up to upper management, who report to the CEO. Like, same type of thing. Like, yes, it's stupid. Yes, Urban Meyer made a very questionable decision. Yes, the apologies and comments coming from him and his camp have been kind of bleh at best. But beside the point, these guys want to win. And Trevor Lawrence was selected to be a captain of this team for a reason. And I think we're going to see his leadership come through in this game.
All righty. Let's go ahead and hit up the next question on YouTube coming from Brian. How much does Russell Wilson's injury affect Metcalfe? I think it probably helps him a little bit, just like I was discussing earlier on that Geno side of things, because if Geno Smith is the starter, like once he came in, that was where he was looking and where he was getting the ball out to. Tyler Lockett very much became an afterthought in that one. Whereas before that, you've seen Tyler Lockett potentially be the more targeted guy and the guy that Russ was looking to more so. So I think that for fantasy purposes, he may see more targets because of this.
Yeah. And Geno looked very competent, right? Like he did exactly what you want a veteran backup quarterback to come in and do. He came in, he gave his guys a chance, and it's not his fault they lost the game. Tyler Lockett tripped over his own damn shoelaces. Like, that was not PI for anybody screaming about that. Tyler Lockett tripped over his shoestrings. And Geno threw the ball where he was going to be right before Lockett fell. So that is what it is. I think there's some truth to that. Geno's going to do what he can do to try and run the offense and make those play calls. But at the end of the day, his clock is going to be a little bit different than Russell Wilson's, and he's probably going to be a little bit more risk adverse than Russell Wilson would be, because he's not an all-pro quarterback. He's the backup trying to keep the team afloat right now.
Yep. Cool. All righty, let's go ahead and get into the next matchup here. New England heads to Houston. The Patriots taking on the Texans. New England's favored by 9. The over-under on this one, 39.5.
I'm going to take New England to cover this on the road. Like, this Houston team's so bad, and this New England defense is for real. Mills is not going to get anything going on at quarterback. I think that we might have seen that next step for Mac Jones against Tampa Bay in his ability to at least connect with the receivers, right? He wasn't driving the ball down the field a whole hell of a lot, but to complete 19 passes in a row in the NFL is a feat. No matter who you're playing, no matter how deep or shallow those passes are and the route concepts, that is still something that is a very, very good accomplishment. So I think the Patriots cover this. I could see this being a 10, 14-point game. And I'm going to say the under. I just don't think Houston doesn't have the dogs to put up points, right? They got absolutely embarrassed by Buffalo last week. And I don't think the Patriots are going to take it any easier on them. They just don't quite have the offensive firepower that Buffalo does.
Right. Like, this one's not going to surprise me to see this thing be a 20-0 type of game. Like I could absolutely see that one happening. And that's about where I think that this is going to be. So I do think New England's going to cover. I do think that that it's going to be the under that hits on this one. I am absolutely smashing the yes button on Damian Harris. I think he has a big bounce back type of game. So I do like the
third week in a row you've called for this, by the way.
No, I didn't call it last week when they played Tampa Bay. No, sir.
We might need to check the tape. I think you called for the touchdown.
We can go check the tape all day, but I know better than to bet against Tampa Bay's run defense. That's for sure. So no, and to the point where even in our home league where I've got Damian Harris was riding the bench on that one, and I pivoted to wide receivers in that flex spot, which you know how often I don't do that on to bench a running back in a flex for a wide receiver. So
we can do it now. That's how I've been rolling all season.
Right. So I do see a bounce back there. The big question for me is, what is Jonnu Smith's real role in this offense? Like, he has not looked like the big money tight end that they brought in to be. So that's something that I'm going to continue looking at for this team and this offense going forward. I do like the fact that I do like everything that you just said about Mac Jones and where his progression is starting to come along, because I think this New England team is doing a great job of also putting him in positions to be successful. Another question coming in, Brian. Actually, this looks like it's back on the Wilson injury affecting Metcalfe. Thanks. I made a trade for him just 2 days ago and was worried about his performance. I think you'll be just fine with DK. Absolutely. And that was where Geno was looking for every one of those passes. Most of DK's production last night came when Geno Smith was in at quarterback. So I think you'll be just fine.
I'd agree. Have fun. Enjoy. He's a fun player to have on your team.
It's a lot of fun to watch. Absolutely. All right, let's get into the afternoon slate of games. We got the Chicago Bears heading to the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders favored by 5.5, over under on this one, 44. And the Bears making that announcement official that Justin Fields will be the starter going forward. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think this is more Ryan Pace telling Matt Nagy, you either want your job or you don't, and this is how we're going to do it. Yep. That being said, the Raiders have looked much better than I anticipated them to look this season. They need to find ways to quit putting themselves in early holes and playing catch up so much. But that being said, they're back at home. The Bears are not the same caliber of team that the Chargers were. Fields, making his, official franchise quarterback debut, right? And now that he's been labeled that guy, I think we're going to see him have a little bit of success here, but I think the Raiders find a way to cover. I think they can get him by touchdown here. I think it's just the under. I think we could see just under here and something like 24-14 or something like that, and 24-17, like something that's just scraping the under.
I think you're probably right. I think the Bears are going to be in trouble in this game, though. So I do see the Raiders covering on this one, and I see it being about I think you've got it right. I think they're kind of in that 7 to 10 point range is how I see this one playing out. A lot of that has to do with the fact that when you look at how Justin Fields has played so far this year, right? I think he's got like 11 or 12 completions on the year. The passing attack is the Bears' offensive prowess is not running through the passing game on that one. The fact that their primary ball carrier, David Montgomery, is out. Damian Williams is playable and is startable for sure in this one. And he'll look to have a pretty good game. But and the Raiders have given, like, if you're going to move the ball on the Raiders, that's one of the easiest ways to do it is running the ball. They've given up the 6th most points to the running back position this year. But I don't know that the Bears have enough firepower in order to keep this one as close as a lot of folks kind of looking at this spread might think it might be. So I see the Raiders winning by about 7-10 points there. I see the under on this one being hit. What I'm going to be very interested to see is that defensive end Casey, I believe is his name, out of Las Vegas, what that matchup looks like between him and Fields, because he gets after the quarterback a little bit, and I'm very interested to see where Justin Fields' legs kick in, and are we going to get some of that rushing upside and that rushing floor that everybody's thinking from Justin Fields?
I think Justin Fields needs to have 50 to 60 yards on the ground for the Bears to be able to keep this remotely close. And whether that's, a couple different 8 to 10 yard scampers, whether it's a designed run play every once in a while to try and get the defensive ends to not tee in on him so much. But Justin Fields has to run the ball at least somewhat to make the linebackers stay at home and give everyone reason for pause. Because if he's just going to sit back there and try and dissect the Raiders defense, I'm sorry, that's just not going to work. You're not at that level yet.
Right. All righty, let's go ahead and head on over to the next matchup, and that is the Cleveland Browns heading to the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers favored by 2, over under on this one, 47. What are your thoughts here?
I like the Chargers by field goal here. It wouldn't surprise me to see this game hit the under, as both defenses have been playing pretty well here lately. Baker, obviously the news came out about him and his torn labrum that he's trying to kind of work themselves through. I would expect Cleveland to try and find some holes on the ground here and chew up as much clock as possible to not give Justin Herbert time to go crazy in the passing game. So I'm Chargers cover, but we're going the under for the sake of being different.
See, and when I was looking at this, I think if the unders hit, I think that actually drastically swings the favorite to the Browns here. I actually had the Browns winning this one. Woo! And in a lower scoring affair here. And a lot of the reason is, if you look at it, the Browns have given up a lot less plays to opposing players, like opposing teams. So their plays per game given up are a lot lower than the league average there. And the Chargers have really made their hay on having kind of quick drives, quick hitting plays, things like that. And so you've got a little bit of a strength on strength kind of playing against here. And I think that the defense will travel in this one and slow down that Chargers offense there a little bit, make them be a little bit more methodical and make them have to try and grind it out a little bit more, which I don't think that necessarily favors that style of offense, to the point where Cleveland will slow the game down, be able to keep it a lower scoring affair, and I think that they'll pull that win out there.
Does Mike Williams bounce back after a less than stellar performance against the Raiders?
I think he bounces back, but I don't think it's a bounce back to the point that he ends up in the stratosphere where he's been playing all season. When I say a bounce back, I think that you're probably going to see him somewhere around about 80 yards. Maybe he gets a touchdown. So he'll have a very usable and decent fantasy day, but when it's all said and done, I see him probably I'm still working through my rankings, but my initial rankings have him somewhere around wide receiver 16 this week. All righty, let's go ahead and head on over to a divisional matchup here. The New York Giants heading to the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas favored by 7, over under 52. What are your thoughts here?
The Cowboys are the only team in the league who are 4-0 against the spread. And that streak continues on Sunday. So I'm taking the Cowboys. I'm taking the over. I just think that they're just clicking. They're clicking in all the right ways. I expect another solid game from Zeke. I expect Daniel Jones to have a monster game on the other side going up against this Cowboys pass defense. So we'll see Kadarius Toney get involved, right? We saw Kenny Golladay start to get involved last week. He went over 100 yards. So if that can continue, we got something coming. Saquon continues to get better and better each week, much to the disbelief of my co-host. But lack of options. He's got to get better. This team has to run through Saquon to be any type of relevant and try and stay competitive. So this should be a fun game. This should be a high-scoring game, some back and forth here. Ultimately, the Cowboys have too much firepower, and the defense is just opportunistic enough to turn over Daniel Jones twice, and because of that, we will see the Cowboys find a way to cover.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head where I saw at least 2 turnovers coming from the Giants on this one, to the point where Dallas is going to be able to cover a touchdown on this one. And it honestly wouldn't surprise me if you see Daniel Jones throw 2 interceptions and have a fumble in this one. So like, it really wouldn't surprise me to see that one come to play there. And you're right. Like, much to my chagrin there, Saquon has been looking good, and I say chagrin, but it was part of that is simply from the standpoint. I was very down on him before the season started, and even through the season a little bit, to the point where I've got to come back to the table and reanalyze that and relook at a few things there to go forward.
Right. And I think now, after the last 2 weeks, my next question about Saquon is, can he be relevant for fantasy and for a football game while not scoring a 30-plus yard touchdown?
Right.
Like, those help. Those are great for fantasy. Those are not things that you can count on week in and week out. So that's kind of the next step is he back to, is he a top 15 back? Yeah, right now he probably is a top 15 back. Is he a top 10 back, though? Take away those long touchdowns, and I think you could have a pretty strong argument saying he's not there just yet. So it will be interesting to see if the Cowboys are going to try and scheme him out, or if they're going to just stay with their kind of standard defensive approach where we're going to capitalize on your mistakes, and that's how we're going to make you pay because our offense is good enough to hang 50 if we want it to.
Right. Well, and Dallas has actually been pretty good about not allowing many points to the opposing team running backs. They're ranked 28th overall against on points allowed to opposing running backs. So, they've done a good job limiting some of the running back damage from opposing running backs there. But it'll be interesting to see, because they've primarily given up most of their points to opposing fantasy wide receivers and quarterbacks and tight ends. But it'll be interesting to see how that one comes to play. The Arizona Cardinals head over to San Francisco.
That's a lot of red.
That is a lot of red. The Cardinals are favored by 5, the over under 49. What are your thoughts here?
This has been the tough one to call all week, right? Like, do the Cardinals have a letdown after going into LA and kind of sticking it to the Rams? Are the 49ers in desperation mode? Or are they going to have a conservative game plan with Trey Lance being the quarterback? There's a lot of questions going on about this game. Ultimately, I think Kyler continues his MVP pace here. I think we see the Cardinals win, and does San Francisco find a way? I'm going to say the Cardinals by a touchdown. And we're going to go the over here. I think we're going to see some fireworks here in this game between Debo and Trey Lance and Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins and some of the explosive plays back and forth here. I'm going to take the over, and the Cardinals are going to find a way to do it by a touchdown.
Right. And the Cardinals have given up points to opposing wide receivers for sure. And I think you'll see some of that continue. I've got the Cardinals. I had the Cardinals covering this one. I had the over on this one. When it's all said and done, I do think that this will be an interesting deal as far as how Shanahan's going to scheme Trey Lance in this game and how that's going to come to fruition. And I think he's going to do I think you're going to see a lot of very interesting packages and a lot of interesting play calls to be able to utilize Trey Lance and try and put him into position to succeed, because this Arizona Cardinals team is a very tough opponent to try and win against. They've got a pretty good defense on it, and you've got Kyler Murray just running up and down the field and being able to put points up at will, it seems like, and really having that MVP caliber season there. Let's go ahead and head on over to Kansas City. So the Buffalo Bills heading to Kansas City. The spread on this one, KC's favored by 2.5 points. The over-under is 56.5. Your thoughts here?
I'm going contrarian with a lot of people here. I'm going to take the under, and I'm going to take the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
I am not convinced that Kansas City can turn it on just whenever they want to, like we've thought in years past. We've seen some chinks in the armor, both against the Ravens and against the Chargers. And quite frankly, Kansas City let Philadelphia back in that game to some extent, right? Yes, it was at hand. Yes, Tyreek went freaking bonkers, and Mahomes had 5 touchdowns, and all the highlights tell you that the Chiefs are back. If you watch the game, I'm not really convinced that it's all that way there. I think Buffalo is closer to being back to what they were last season, as we saw with the 44-0 shellacking of the Houston Texans. And honestly, guys, it looked like the Bills weren't trying. After about midway through the second quarter, it looked like the Bills were just going out, all right, let's move the ball. Let's make sure we don't put anybody in a position to get injured. Like, we don't need to come away with this game less than whole when it was all said and done with. And they still put up 44 points. Like, they're clicking. I expect Diggs to have a monster game. I expect Tyreek to have a good game. But ultimately, I do think that the Bills find a way to win this game late. And we're going to say under for the sake of being contrarian to everybody else who wants this to be like a 70-point total and see the Chiefs winning.
Right. I don't think that this is going to be the Ravens-Chiefs matchup that we saw a couple weeks ago, where it was up and down, just constant scoring. The Bills' defense is legit. It is real. They've given up very few points to opposing teams, right? Like, when you look at it, they're ranked first in points allowed against the quarterback, third in points allowed to the running back, first in points allowed to the wide receiver, and fourth in points allowed to the tight end. So this defense is playing really good. Granted, those point totals are definitely helped when you throw a shutout the week before, but this Buffalo Bills defense looks like have got it clicking, looks like they've got it going there. I don't think that you're going to see this one get into the over either. I think that this one's going to end up playing out a lot like what you saw that first week, where you saw Kansas City and Cleveland go at it, where it was a much lower scoring affair than any of us really thought. I think that that's going to be how this thing kind of plays out there, to the point where I think I do think Buffalo wins on the road. A lot of it has to do with the fact that if you're going to beat the Chiefs, you hold them under 30 points. And I think that the Bills are going to hold the Chiefs right around about 20, 23 points. And you'll see the Bills probably put up about 27. So that's how I see this thing playing out, is about 27 to 23 in favor of the Bills. So let's go ahead and head over to YouTube, where we got a question coming in from James on YouTube. Would you trade Gibson for Monty and Damian Harris? My RBs are Henry and Henderson. I have Williams. Man, I would probably do that. But especially when I'm getting a 2-for-1 where it's Monty and Damian Harris, I think you're going to get the value back on that one. More so than deal with Antonio Gibson, who's dealing with, like we talked about, the stress fractures in the shins.
I think the only thing about this that concerns me is Henderson is a little bit health resistant at times. But if you feel like you can absorb that over the next, 4 weeks or so until Monty comes back, then it makes sense, right? You're making your move now. We know Gibson has that stress fracture. And if the Washington football team can't pull their head out of their butts and make some of this happen and get some W's on the board, and really start to look like the team that they were last year, they're going to lose pace in this division really quick with the way the Cowboys are playing right now. So I can sign off on that. I can sign off on that. If you feel that that's the way that you want to go, and you have Sony, yes, then absolutely.
Smash the yes button.
If you have Sony for Williams there, so that way you're not losing a running back, I'd do it. You can deal with Monty being out. You have Damian Harris to play when the matchup is right. And
like
then
this week in Houston.
Yes, and then you have King Henry to carry the load for you. So yeah, go ahead and smash yes. Create some running back depth for yourself, and best of luck to you.
Yep, I like it. Another question coming in. This one coming from Ju Zhao on YouTube, a half-point PPR. You got to pick two: Keenan Allen, Swift, Deontay. I'm going Allen and Swift myself.
Man, what am I going to do here? I'm going to go Swift. I will co-sign on that right away. I think Deontay might be the play here. Like, Ben Roethlisberger just locks in on him. Like, and that's the thing. Like, Keenan Allen seeing 7 or 8 targets a game, and really 6 of them he's bringing in. Deontay's seeing like 12 or 13 targets a game when Ben can stay upright. Now, that's the question. We said earlier we expect it to be a low-scoring game, so who knows? But let's look at this real quick. Deontay Johnson had 9 receptions for 90. What was it? 9 for 96 last week with the touchdown.
Yeah, something like that.
44 yards came off of one play. So he had the 8 receptions for 50 yards. Like, they're not going to be big plays, but it's going to be, you're going to be racking up the receptions. DeAndre Swift, yes, just the lack of pass catchers there. So Allen's probably the higher ceiling in this game against the Browns, but yeah, I'll go Swift and Deontay.
Yeah, I would go with Allen and Swift. Part of the reason I'm looking at Allen there is just this fact that I don't see the ball getting moved much in that Pittsburgh and Denver game. I think that you'll see a lot of 3 and outs. I think you'll see a lot of unsustained drives, and I think that you're going to see a very low scoring affair in this thing, where I think that we might be lucky if one team breaks 20 points in that one there. I don't see the points coming on that. I don't see enough yardage being put up, and I don't see enough end zone being found there to really do that. Whereas I do think that the Chargers, while that game's going to be a closer matchup there with the Browns, I do think that they're going to be able to move the ball. Still, I think they're going to be able to sustain some drives, and I think that they're going to be able to find the end zone far more than what the Steelers against the Broncos. So, when it's all said and done, I think when I had my rankings there, I'll have to go back and look, but I know I had Keenan Allen ranked ahead of Deontay Johnson there. So that's kind of how I've got that one there.
Yeah, you've changed my mind. Good argument, Derek.
All right. So he says he also has Eckler. Low scoring doesn't sound too good. When I say yes, I did mean the Pittsburgh game. Denver and Pittsburgh. I don't think that you're going to see this one. I think you're going to be lucky to see a team hit 20 points on that one. I really like, they set the over under at 39.5 points on this thing. So I don't see there being a bunch of points scored in that one. Both the Broncos and the Steelers knew coming into the season they were going to have to rely on their defenses to win games. And where Pittsburgh has really moved the ball, Denver does a very good job against that. So I don't see a lot of sustained drives in this one, a lot of yards or touchdowns or points being put up.
I concur. I've changed my mind. Allen and Swift are your plays there.
So he also says Swift's O-line is gone, though. Not sure how that'll affect him.
Screen game, man. Yep. It's you want the reception. Swift's production is never going to come between the tackles, at least how the season's currently set up.
Correct.
You want the Vikings to jump out in front, and then you want Swift to have like 9 targets out of the backfield where he can catch 7 of them and scamper for like 60, 75 yards, something like that, and fall into the end zone. That's what you need out of DeAndre Swift.
Yep, and that's where you're going to get the production on him. You're not going to get, maybe 10 carries. 10 to 15 carries is going to be a big workload for that Detroit Lions run game on any given week. Because of how that team's set up, they're going to be playing from behind. And right now, Minnesota is favored by 10 in that one. So the fact that you've got what appears to be a game where Minnesota will get out early, that actually favors DeAndre Swift in this one because of everything Kevin just said with that pass game coming out of the backfield. So, Kevin, I think we've got one more game still to break down here. And that is the Colts and the Ravens. Indianapolis Colts heading to Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore's favored by 7. The over-under is 45.5. Your thoughts here?
the Colts defense has not been what
Nope.
we thought they were going to be this year, right? Like Darius Leonard has not looked like his all-pro self. They're not getting a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback, even with DeForest Buckner kind of clogging up the middle there for him. Their offensive line's been a little bit banged up. I think we're going to see a lot of rushing in this game from both sides. I think the Colts realize that Carson Wentz does not need to be throwing the ball 40 times a game. The Ravens are never going to have Lamar throw 40 times a game. So this might be a pretty short Monday night game, kind of like the Steelers and Broncos that we were talking about. The ball will stay on the ground quite a bit. Ultimately, the Ravens cover. Like I just don't see how the Colts are going to stop them enough and then turn around and put enough points up on them to be relevant unless you get a garbage time cover, which is possible. I'm going to take the over because it's a Monday night game and teams like to show off on Monday night, and the Ravens to cover.
Yep. Agreed on all of those points. I think you'll also see Hollywood Brown get another long touchdown type of thing. The Colts have been susceptible to air yards and being able to get a guy behind the defense. It'll be interesting to see what this team looks like because you may see Rashad Bateman finally make his pro debut here. I'm not looking for him to provide much for fantasy. I think he's still got to supplant Sammy Watkins in that offense and take that gameplay.
19 targets for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns for Bateman. No, I'm just kidding.
So I think that this will be a low scoring affair, but I think that they do just cover. And when I'm talking low scoring, I think you're probably going to see about a 27-20 game with the Ravens winning. So at that point, I guess I'm calling for the push, but at that point, I like the Ravens just enough to cover it. So I'll take the Ravens and the over just barely on that one. So call it a 28-20 type of game. So, but again, I think that you're right on how you hit that one, that it's going to be a lot of ground and pound. You're going to see a clock that's continually moving, and you're going to see a lot of guys, simply moving the ball on the ground with the occasional air shot through the air on a couple of deep connection tries. So,
and if the Baltimore Ravens need 4 yards to get over 100 rushing yards at the very end of the game, they will do it. So just beware.
Right. And Juzal saying, thanks, guys. Good stuff. We appreciate that one. Guys, if you enjoyed the show, do us a favor, hop over onto the YouTube channel, click the subscribe button, ring the bell. We bring the show to you live 3 times a week. We go Friday nights, 11 p.m. Eastern. That's this show that you just caught. We do this one for you in season. We do our normal show on Tuesday nights, 11 p.m. Eastern, where we're joined by the other good old boy, Alex. And then we've got a Sunday morning start sit DFS type of show for you. Sunday mornings, 11:45 a.m. Eastern. And one of the best ways to help support us is to go onto the YouTube channel, click that subscribe button, ring that bell so you get all the notifications. Kevin, any final thoughts for the viewers and listeners?
Have fun. Don't rush into trades, guys. Don't rush into trades. There's certain players that, yes, you want to try and capitalize on it if they're having kind of a slow start to the season. But don't sell the farm and give away your depth. We're starting bye weeks. You're going to need that depth here for the next 10 weeks as teams navigate through the buys and as injuries continue to pop up. So don't sell your soul for it. But on the flip side, if he's your guy and you're super convicted about him, go and get him. So we're always here to help. If you need any advice or someone just to bounce an idea off of, feel free to hit us up on all the socials. And until next time.
Absolutely. And you can find those socials. We are at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Good Old Boys FF. You can see that thing right up there. Find us there, follow us, subscribe to us, all of that kind of good stuff. We'll absolutely make sure that we answer any questions that you guys have coming our way. But thanks for tuning in, guys. For Kevin, I'm Derek. That's going to call it a night for us. Be safe out there.